아니 쇼가양주다 당아주글라 내가 가래치는 예래야 삼마칸의 실리기도 세랑아주 셈날 바 심축제외나 나봉아주글라네 랑아 세베 삼로 실리고레스 지사 당하라 세디 나 세치레시디 랑지사 나랑 디기고도 나랑 야고고도 셈베기 다 삼로디 랑지신 삼바세치 용고레 지사다 데네기 랑치스 삼바티 삼노디 때는 아주 레갈레나 안에 가라가라 용구도 셈베게다 제바이나 랑 제바스메 삼노텔레 때네 오 나레 디기 고구수 나레 야고 고구슨 근데 샤다 오 나레 뇌사레세지는 샤리야 파뇌베기야다 오다가 야기 조사 말했더니 지난 시하고 활다야 라소바다 근데 토니 용고레스 지난디 아주 랑치스 삼바세디 괜찮고레스 다데네 안에 가르 공고를 딜 매워서야 탑람 가르치고 그래서는 현재바진배 삼모의 공고를 샹래 랑제바진바나시 샹래 바제바 샹야고 고고를 세비게 근데 지사디 검다에 가르선 잠바나 자와서 샹래 디기 중국으로 셰디기 존나 선배 삼도 다야다 샹기 동아다 제잖아 선배게 니시 삼다 온도스는 공고를 삼르딩이디 샹래 잠바단 제외 삼로딩 아주 야내야도 검체 근데 얇게 땅고 그래서 디다와이나 안디기 라셴이가야 판도하게 좀 죽투 그래서지 온도시네 니 조용 아주 디고 싫어하다.
Good afternoon. This morning session and yesterday's sessions were connected by the presentation that not only do our physical actions and our verbal communication follow from mind, from thought, but when we look in more detail within our thought process, coming from a sense of self, all other thoughts arise, and from these other thoughts then follow physical and verbal behavior. The sense of I then, from this having the sense of I, comes the sense of I want, because I want happiness, and as a sense of repulsion, I don't want, because I don't want to suffer. So having the sense of I comes also with the sense of mine, my happiness, my freedom from suffering. So here, when one's sense of I is related to myself and my happiness first and foremost, this is then called the self-cherishing mind. So from the sense of I comes the wish of I want things, for example, I want things to go my way so I can be happy. I want this situation to end so I can be freed of suffering and be happy. And in this way, attachment and aversion arise. And from this, harmful speech, harmful physical behavior follows. This we need to reflect on repeatedly, coming to see, firstly, the role the self-cherishing mind plays, and that it is always harmful. When we see how pervasive it is within us and that it is harmful, to the extent that we see how pervasive it is and that it is always harmful, to that extent we'll apply ourselves to the development of the contrary mind, the other cherishing mind, the attitude that cherishes others first and foremost. And this mind, together with love and compassion, is what we need to cultivate, with the meaning of love being, may all beings experience only happiness, and compassion being, may all beings be freed of suffering. And cultivating these meditations, seeing the faults of the self-cherishing mind and the benefits of the other cherishing, and then developing love and compassion, repeatedly over a sustained period, immeasurable benefit comes for oneself as well as others.
랑 지승의 삼바세디 랑 제바진의 랑레 디기 중요하다 디기 중요하다 디스 랑 제바진제 현야와도 삼바디서 랑 지승 현야와도 현야와도 와스네 현야 소술레 디기나 현야 동아요나 가케면도 현지 강아주나 가케면도 삼베삼로 줘 현야와도 현야 강아 ben나즈 디식으로 와데 셈제 냐스여겐 디기 자사 냐려야 나즈 따나 가라다나선 디 자교 자당 칼바마 수에디는 뭐태 소수기 배샤라에 우이라 된다지 제베나도 디스와 셴야도 벤 소수기 디기 주야다 소수기 동아세나 소수기 디기 주야 된다라 된다 장장 삼다지 디 돈달라 아니 잔달라 강아 가르쳐나 직기 개발가요 말았으면 삼로스 담바이나 디셴 랑제바진 로시 랑제바진의 셴요와 되로서 디 마즈레 뉘야디레스 다가지 먹어야 디디레스 디기 가서 샤사가 뉴고레스 진짜 셴제바진 바세데 셴나 디기주나 셴나 동아세나 셈베 삼다도 오 셴기 동아세에 돈다다 셴기 디기주에 돈다라 니깔레 자기 니 비주 가리나 로봇체도 니깔레가 지겠나 자기 셈베 삼다도 진짜 디 랑 셴제바진의 랑 야와도와 셴 야고 디기주나 아깔레 하나 개와면도 셈베 삼다디 진짜 디 삼로데 장고 그래서 전주셈바 쳐서 니 냠네 진의 장고래 진짜 전주셈베게 쳐서 디니기 냠는 거래 산지기 디니기 냠네 진의 산조고 디 냠네 마체바는 안 산조고 토투에 매바래 그래서 디니에서 조지기 만술이야 디 냠네 제고래서 디 송고로다
The self-cherishing mind, we need to come to recognize the pervasiveness of, first understand what it is and recognize the pervasive influence it has within us. We need to do this to come to recognize that it's from our self-cherishing that all our suffering arises. The self-cherishing mind places our welfare first and foremost, and it's indifferent to the welfare of others. It's through our self-cherishing mind that we can so readily ignore the situation of others, or if some concern arises, not sufficient concern for us to engage in helping. So to take a very clear illustration, someone who works in an abattoir is engaged in the intentional killing of sentient beings who have life, who value their own life. But the person is able to engage in this intentional killing through seeing their welfare, the fulfillment of their needs, as first and foremost. So here, their livelihood, the attainment of their livelihood, is their primary concern, and that other lives are taken is of no concern to them. So we need to look carefully at what the self-cherishing mind is and the role that it plays in our individual lives, and see how it's from the self-cherishing that all our suffering arises. Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, their primary activity is to ensure the elimination of the self-cherishing mind and the development of the other cherishing mind. And here meaning the development of the other cherishing mind, not its mere development, but acting under its influence. In other words, cultivating of love and compassion and ensuring all the engagement with others is motivated by love and compassion. And to the extent that one is motivated by love and compassion, one will be cherishing others before oneself. And this is the way all the bodhisattvas in the world are training. And all those who've gone on to become Buddhas have trained in this way too. And this is the advice that Lama Atisha is giving here, the advice based on his own experience and how he was living his life.
Turning
back to the text, destroy anger and conceit and be endowed with humility.
Samlo nalo kondro chikiye de ananga sem makiwa chaya nga makiwa chaya digi kenjene ananga lyunga ge namgyu dige yabu meba thya ne chiksuk de ya lyugi go jeba dusha thya digi shala ne jesan shala ne yongore 제시엘이야 뇌바이나 안 미션다디게 소설이야 고요 콘도랑으로 콘도란디네 소설의 순유게 제자 라신니가 뇌바 뇌비게 리고래 콘도세 디네 용구도 제자 디네 자다 디네 삼단에 내가 브라디네 아니다 마음바 깨워 치마서 당아서 타바다 탐지kimbe 고바 삼다비네 콘도 깨바네 니게 랭안 바사 하는 깨워 치마에 나가서야 안동아 용어야다 강아 채과야기 제보디네 용어 콘도게 제보도 누가 마도 용어야 말해 아니 디자 콘도게 바이나 나중에 개화되게 얇게 좀마도제 야 탈바다 탐지킴 보고 와 토발에 바시시고레스 두시는 콘도디 다 콘도디 단 두시는 콘도디 규엔로 삼다디네자 데네 나제제바나 가려서는 나시고 지구이 나 연대여서 나 규침보 나 시우가 지에서 나제제 샹래 통중제도 아니 제 통중제도 안 미션다 가부치 말와 안 미션다게 안 지게 소설이야 균주제래는 양이 소설 맞기와 차야다 니네요 제상 나게다 콘트세야디게 라신니가라 내가 블레 누고레 내가 제 풀레야 누고레스 타바다 탐지킴이 토발아야 바시치고레 제상 맞아 콘트로당 나게세야디 맞기라 매바소고레 디게 주요 말해서 보다 처당 나게 쉬엄자신스
As has been mentioned already, with individual consciousnesses, individual minds, we need to investigate them to see whether they're wholesome or unwholesome. So we take anger and we look at this mind of anger, see how it arises and what its effects are, what its visible effects are. We first see how when anger arises, what impact it has on our state of mind. And this we know clearly, it destroys our mental peace. It hinders the arisal of wisdom. We aren't able to think clearly. We lose even whatever control we have over our mind. We can only think about what we are angry about. And then, to the extent that we express our anger, we bring unhappiness to others. We take out our anger on others, and we just spread our misery around. So therefore, we, in the moment of suffering, when we express it, so too are those unfortunate enough to be in our orbit. And when they now become unhappy, either they take that anger away with them, or that unhappiness away with them, or they return the favor. They speak back to us in kind. And our own suffering is compounded. So we know this as a truth. We have experience of this. And moreover, anger being an affliction, the karma that is accumulated when it ripens in future lives only leads to suffering. Moreover, being an affliction, the karma it accumulates serves as an obstacle to the attainment of liberation and enlightenment. So therefore, suffering comes for oneself, for others, both now, in this life, as well as in our future lives. So this process we need to apply to the variety of consciousnesses, because in this way, through reflecting, for example, on anger again and again, it will become clear to us that anger is always faulty, it is never justified, and we should endeavor not to come under its influence. And similarly, with the second affliction mentioned here, conceit or pride. So pride arises so readily and towards so many varying objects, can rise towards our physique, towards our knowledge, towards our talents, our material wealth, can arise in so many ways. From this affliction, we tend to look down on others, separating us from them ever further. From the arisal of pride, seeing ourselves as better than others, this is an ideal basis for so many other afflictions to grow and fester within us. Being an affliction then causes us to suffer. The expression of it causes others to suffer. The negative karma accumulated causes us to suffer in our future lives, and the pride acts as an obstacle to liberation and enlightenment. So we see here the similar effects of this affliction of pride as well as that of anger. And this is the process we need to apply to our minds, come to see how these afflictive minds have to be abandoned.
Santa Kondro said Magia, the Mavas over said Ta Kondro Mava said Yelena Zuki Shanlia, Shen, Rang Nanshin, Deotiba Dingomi de Bares and Shanlia, Jamba and Zeva Samla Tamaina, Digi Kondro de Kiel, Mongo Chigore, Chazanga Jamjekazi, some shoot. Kortuba in there, Disugi, and Ya Kondro Magia, Caparin Gore, Chazan Kondro Magia, Mazuelia, Kondro Magia, and Antuki, Mongo, Jandor Shadi, or the Sosugi, Jamje Shanlia, Jamje some diet, Chagore, this some Davena, Kondro Gia, the Mongo Chagore, Kondro Kigo Marwa.
How to deal with the propensity to anger that one may have. Well, the Buddha Dharma fortunately does present a vaccine to anger. And the vaccine to the arisal of the disease of anger is the prior cultivation of love and compassion. And to the extent that one develops love and compassion, these two consciousnesses serve as an antidote to anger. The stronger our love and compassion is within us, the less likely anger is to arise, or should it, the less strength that it will have.
That Kondro Dine. Just not Kondro yes, Gion by Nagarchi or Lamsang Kondro Mevas, Kalehapore, Kondro Giva in. Just that Kondro Kiesa Udil, Lamsang Yush, and another Dela Dust per Maton, Tarin Stilia, Jig, some Tavena, got Matons at Jovene, Kondro de Suchun Duada. Kondro the Gish in Becapina, that did Anzugi. Kondro di Gion de Kabla, Dele Cho Shamba, Samlo Shandash Danche, and the Samlo Shamba the Shukcher Danshavena, Kondro de Mashu Chundu, Benang those Jene, Jigger, Kondra Shukchibo Kidevena, Bear Kondro get Bajig, Duava Juksha, Leja, Galeka dinner, call Galeka, Samlo de Shukcher Ledu, Digumigi, Lungusegi, Kondro Lung Droyadi, Majadu, Kondro Shukcher Chun to water. Chizan Deneza, and the Sat host that the Lungos that Junglings Patayada, do genetic Choi. Been tongue get Yapura, so opening to do some big injury, some Shukshimo Korea, and the Kondro Ma Shiro Chagore, and the Negi Shiro or Daddy, the Ying Kondrogia, the Yabochumino, Chesa, that Delia, Kondro gets a Udelia, or that Koyang, Marana, Dewa, Doma de Vachiba, called Dewa Kore, Duma, Dugoma, India, and do some Tavana, and Kondro Ma, do smart Jamagi, Kabarin Korwa.
Love and compassion being the vaccine to anger indicates it needs to be taken prior to the arisal of anger. Once anger has arisen, it's very difficult, whilst one is angry, to generate love and compassion. The affliction of anger will have overwhelmed oneself. So therefore, what may well be skillful is to separate oneself from the situation. When we notice anger is arising, and we know it's of a strength that we cannot eradicate it immediately, we should try and separate ourselves from the situation. Separating ourselves from the situation in which we are angry, then it could be useful to try and distract our mind, because separated from perhaps the person or the situation that we are angry about on its own will not lead us to our anger immediately calming, because we tend to obsess about the harm we believe we've received. So therefore, ideally, separate ourselves and distract ourselves. Perhaps go somewhere beautiful, listen to something beautiful, observe something beautiful, and try and calm the mind in that way. But if we just leave the antidote as being mere distraction, there's not going to be a long-term change in ourselves. We will become no less an angry person. When the mind has calmed sufficiently, use that opportunity to once again generate love and compassion, and now in particular towards that person, reflecting that that person, just like ourselves, wants only happiness. Despite wanting happiness, they in that moment were most probably afflicted, and therefore they were suffering. So thinking like this, or in other ways that are suitable, generate love and compassion, and in this way strengthen our habituation to the actual antidote of anger.
Aniba dile membe semna temperchas. Membe semna temperchas sidudi ngaja ma je gi donda sungor membe sem sidudi membe mission she ji na jugi jiso na lai na da mission da yum tu da sosugi membe se to masa sungor yese da ka masa sungor sen oda nge soso ba yende chu nga indi console de nga dragre sambe yende nga che yu yu nga che yu su nga ya ga yu sam da ben ne ko nga je je ni nga yor ba dine inza del ya membe sem sido oda nga rang singyo ya go singgo de ine nge ma shen yu kon je singyo ma go yor sam da ben ne dine nga je ji ma le che je membe sem soso ge na nge ma singyo kon ju sing nge ma singyo ma go yor se de soso ba ma sa ga li go ba dine sam tang ko de membe ma sa sung go re je membe sem da temper dine masa sungba ina ane ngaje ki mares ta ngaje ki ma je ngongo raso mana tabshir tablam tije gore jere.
And so as not to have pride arise, rather cultivate humility, and that's the next line, and be endowed with humility. To the extent we can cultivate a humble attitude, we will not readily give rise to pride. Because pride is thinking that we are better than others. It is, firstly, an exaggeration of the qualities as we see them within ourselves. And then from this, we tend to look down on others. Whereas if one is humble, one is not so focused on oneself, but is rather focused on the qualities of others. So if one is humble, one is not focusing on the faults of others, but is rather being aware of the qualities of others. And everyone has qualities. Others will have knowledge about certain things that we lack. So whomever they are, we can remind ourselves about the qualities of others, and thereby keep ourselves humble in their presence.
지자 배미 고런 로병 약보 개와체 아니 기시시야를 배 기시 되고 지금 약보 시신가 니 약보에 요래서 그라 나 고라든 마디와 마침녀도 미망보여서 다데네 부고 망보여서 되는 시대 고라다 디스데 가고 신고마 정셉 나디와 친제 너 거기 가서 거기서 가고 신 할로정 토인스메 징나야라 보고를 쉬고 나야 계전 기시 지게 망보라 지시도 아 경서 신고요 말다 가고 신고요 말도 아니 기시 망보 시에레세 되는 시대가 부지기 갈라 그랬으네 결혼 되네기 나자 첨보다 되네기 쉬우치야 삼다 당교 말해서 이 결혼 개발에 결혼 약보를 해서 이내 결혼의 신경 아주 마신 바래 결혼 로저 야가래서 이내 안주기 신경 결혼 마신교 망부 열에 결혼 신경 아주 마신교 망부 열에 안주하고 결혼하고 망부 열에서 제가 결혼 나게게 왔어요 말해서 부디 렌두스 잡아래지래.
There's a story from old Tibet where a skilled and renowned teacher who was highly learned and skilled in communicating the Dharma was traveling. And he came to a village, and the villagers tended to be largely illiterate. But this a great teacher was not only a great teacher, but highly learned and spontaneously looked down on the villagers that were around him. Pride, which is so often much more obvious to those around one than to the pride person themselves, was immediately called out by a small child. The small child said, I can readily observe that you are very proud, and I can understand that you are highly learned, and you know so many things that I don't know. But I can assure you that even myself as a small child, there are things that I know that you don't know.
And the
response, of course, was quite dismissive. What could you possibly know that I don't?
And the nge ame min gares ke ha singuye na nge ame min gares ke stiwares 지도네 ame min ko singmarwa a umela 제자 nge singyo 결혼마 singyo 먹고도 와 지자 nge ame min nge singyo를 결혼마 singyo 왔어 제자 nge singyo 결혼마 singyo 왔어 제자 그 나래야 지구제가 민도슬라레제 더듬로.
And the child responds, so you think you know so much that I don't know, and I know nothing compared to you? Tell me, what's the name of my mother? And of course, what could he say? He said, yes, you don't even know the name of my mother, and I can tell you, there are many other things that I know that you don't know. And then what could he say? But he was put back in his place, and he recognized the strength of his pride.
dine inza da ngaro du sam da ha du che de ani so so ra ga mi chi su tu bi ne da ngara singyo be so so ya go ne da ngi ma singyo kon je singyo mo yo re sam ba na so so ya nga ge ma ge ge kya ba yong re se ma sa sung re se ji da di drum de de so dan je bi to ne ni su cha go re.
Similar to this story, we should recognize the good qualities that others have. Certainly, we all have good qualities, and these we should recognize as well, and not exaggerate them, and also not recognize our own good qualities at the expense of others. Nevertheless, or moreover, we should be primarily aware of the good qualities of others. Continuing, relinquish wrong livelihood and be sustained by ethical livelihood.
nganzu benju trupche han nganzu beju ta ba ne di chowa de lo so res jesan di shen lia nu go shen ju kuma go ya da shen ji go har ta ya da shen yi zan ne chowa da ga je le zhang bu ma che ba don da cho zhang bu ma che ba she shen go har ta shen ji cha la kuma go ya da shen ju cho chon de ne ge sa ya de du lo de ge beju ta ba ne de le lo be chowa la ge res di ji gyo ma di pa lo so se de bang go res ya.
What constitutes wrong livelihood goes beyond merely engaging in one's livelihood that is illegal. Of course, if something's illegal, this is likely to be considered wrong livelihood. But it's subtler than that. In brief, it means our interactions with others should be honest. Honest and straightforward. Our livelihood, we shouldn't acquire our livelihood through deceiving others, taking advantage of others. Rather, we should be honest and straightforward in our interactions with others.
Delia chuyu chuyu tsowar cha sede da chuyu tsowa labdu rangpo cheje shi ngang zugi tunggen ruye chi shen le manyo ba da shen le minu be to ne ngang zu chuyu tunggen rupche be ju dang go re so re je de rangpo che ani jige shen go hor ma da so so rangpo rangsha je da ani jige ngang zugi da rangpo che be ne da be ngang zugi jige 신나 죄대 먹고자 당 코유나네 때가 먹고된 시행기 디기 기엔지 샬레 뇌비게 자왈 먹고여바는 만저디 소수기 변주 주야 된다래 때가 먹고된 샬레 뇌나 가야 말은 안기 변주 디 캡사야보라는 지구도 삼바인다 디 가서 되네기 뇌바 샬레 뇌기여바는 지구 말에 지사당 안 주기 내가 가래 제베네 샬레 미뇌바지 아니 지게 소수기 튕긴 주야 되게 아니 제 고홀 마땅와 지 정부 장샤제네 근데 튕긴 죽제 안에 비주 당고 그래서 추기 초와서 나도 코유다지 현지가도 지 코유레미 게르소소라라는 술리네 심제 술리네 간실리 현랴 마니베토네 아주 튕긴 죽야다 안 정부 장샤제네 안 정부 진도 현고 홀 마땅와제네 튕긴 죽야디게 안도 신주고 그래서.
The next line, be sustained by ethical livelihood. So this is quite clear. If one is ethical, one's interactions with others will be honest and straightforward. One will not be interacting with others in a manner that brings harm. Because where one's livelihood is one of a wrong livelihood, what one may be engaging in may not only be perfectly legal, but be perceived as normal within society. Nevertheless, harm is coming to others. So, for example, if we think of the many decisions that have been taken that has led to environmental destruction, these fall into the category of wrong livelihood because of the harm that it comes to others. Certainly would have been legal and encouraged and perhaps even praised. But this is wrong livelihood because harm comes to others. So in brief, what it means is being honest and straightforward in our interactions with others, not deceiving them, not taking advantage of them, not placing our needs first and foremost, and being indifferent to the impact our actions have on others.
최외 튕겨 주야 지금 거로 다 정부 장샤지 현라만 니베 토네 최외 튕겨 주야 최외 튕겨라지 이용고로 받으면 가시에도 꾸마고네 자랑 의모 보라바네 디현라 니베 토네 자랑 의드라와 가시 소소라는 게 내가 레제 안지게 의라와디 디 정부 장샤진의 라교로와 많이 현라 미니베 토네 라교로와 그래서 디 용다 마요세디 셈나로 셈내야 할리고래 그래서 로비 초와 차야 다 취유 초와 요야디 가르 중고에서 나가 삼려야 현래 뇌바친의 되게 말에 셈비디징 아저가 가사나 디르 슈바네 현래 류가 유스 현래 뇌바친의 되게 말이야 셈베게 추림 소외 원이 거네 하는 아저게 레가체네 레가 레베이나 안 디기 요야기 아저 최외 튕기 요야디 변절 주야디 다 현래 미니베트네 두구르와 샬라 뇌비게 자와지 어다디 레네 지금 민도 디 샬라 뇌기도 와서베 샬라 뇌기한테 레가데 레기 말와 하고서 레기 말와 지산 디네자 류 nga 셈려야 다야체 셈나나 끊어 가르고 무슨 류가 유스 샬라 뇌베 자와서 지금이야 삼베 삼로 디 여바이나 아니가 저기 최외 초와디 튕긴 주비야디 샬라 미네베 장모 장샤 토네 튕긴 최외 초와디 두고 와래 다 소소라라 랑지상 나랑 레변조라네 디기도 말에 지라네 셴레 가르네라면데 셴이 구마구나 셴 콘솔 말에나 가야 말씀비 데네 삼다베네 데네 셴 고고다야다 안싱이선데 잘라구야 구마구야다 데네기 수dim마송바이나 디 안네 지 고소레송지야다 데네기 냥아 여러와 데네 인자 안네 냥 주게 데네기 로베 초와 가야디 당 취기 초와 야고 용야디 군노레 셈나리아 류가 유스미 샬레 뇌베 자와 싸우기 지금 매선배 삼라다야다 샬리아 팬바다 현이 동아 자야 된다랑이 로버 지긴 세배 삼라 잠니지 삼보 두신의 삼라 같이 슈체베나 디네 로베 소와도 용 말에 안에 가서래 안에 취기 소와디 둑투가 차거와 제 셈밀 다야데 다가서 슈바네 셈나 다고래서야 돼 군원을 하래
As has been made clear many times in the text, the practice of Buddhism is primarily about taking care of our mind. So here we need to look carefully at our mind, because having as a basis the self-cherishing mind, if this is combined with a lack of ethics, then it is very likely one will engage in perhaps illegal behavior, but certainly unethical behavior. We need to look within ourselves, see to the extent that the self-cherishing mind arises, as well as how concerned we are about the impact our behavior has on others. And then, through going through the training that has been presented thus far, we will develop an ethical outlook, the commitment not to bring harm to others. So on a very coarse level, this will bring an end to such behavior as stealing from others. But as we're starting to take ever greater care of our mind, we will no longer lie to others, deceive others. We will no longer be dominated by achieving wealth or prestige and reputation. So in this way, as we become ever more ethical, we will be restraining our mind from coming under the influence of the afflictions. And if we combine this with the cultivation of the other cherishing mind and love and compassion, as we develop ever greater virtuous qualities, then engaging in an ethical livelihood will be second nature. It will be easy for us. And when an easy opportunity comes that we can engage in something that's unethical, even if no one were to find out, with ease we'll turn away from it, because this will not match with who we want to be as a person. So in this way, again, look at our mind, take care of our mind, train our mind as is presented here, and it'll become ever easier to live in accordance with ethics.
And then
the next two lines. Forsake material possessions, embellish yourself with the wealth of the Aryas. Rangla Goho, Chu Yamlin Chevala, Tangan Kalada, Sayadunya, Jason, Tixam Chigi, Tangi Tivache, and Dile Mawa, Tapshimata, Tangyoma, Reso, Sazitamje, Pancha, she said. The meaning then of forsake material possessions is, it doesn't mean to completely abandon them. Rather, we can relate it to the fourth verse, that one should have as a spiritual practitioner, one should have modest desires, be easily satisfied. Because as a spiritual practitioner, we need to guard ourselves from being dominated by the need to gather wealth and prestige. Because if one has great material desires, one will need to spend a lot of our time working, and not only will we have our days consumed with work, but so too will our mental process. Our time and our mental energy will be consumed by our pursuit for material gain. Rather, we need to be easily satisfied, have modest desires, so that we have the mental space as well as the time to be able to keep our mind virtuous and strengthen our virtuous minds.
Esa danga jogi dusye de pa karma pa dusye zoru ko dusye de yang ya ra ya ma ba so le ji mi ro xin ya lo che chi to de an yang ya ma lo chung da ya ka ma ro ko chi ro de ma chung da yo ba na da de la ga de le jen je ma na ga nyam ne che shu sa che ro ba de ne yo ma re de ne za danga jogi dusye de ba zoru dusye yang ya le ya me ba re me ban za danga zo kar che wo re se ne ji le ga mang bo bian ju mang bo sa ya da de ne ge chen go ho ne le ga mang bo le ba na de ne kom 다 냠르지야 고급들라고 말해. 제가 디네자 소소리아 소소기 최위 튕긴 돈에 당에 직sam직이야 제자네. 소소기 비셔 땅하게 된다라 변조 같이 뭐 사고요 말해서 그래. 다양 상세 탐지 뭐저 한 변조 균에 사고 말해 별라면 현야 동화세다 현익변 출로자야다 디 미망보시 로고도야 디시 냥아 첨부된 이게 건조강한세에 된다라야 먼저 변조 직 탑시제 ल्या가 직 래제 변조 탑시에 컨트롤 제베나 니디디어 가서 현이 동화세야다 디기투에 최제 냠는데 가르스는 현이 동화세야다 디기투에 치도래 인자 니 된다라 현이 동화세야다 디기투야야 아니 아직 갈래장 위로 직 변조라 사제 컨트롤 강한세 투네 대 양상지다 요는가 최냠네 상승이 탐제 뻥와자 신냠는 지규 제사 상승이 된다라 직 비시 땅 탑시 직매 삼바이나 콘솔리어 로봇이 투야요 말와 동화세 통 말와 제네자 다데데 Shenyi Dunda, Shen Dunga Seada, Shenyi Ganga Seala, Panto Cheala, Majo Benjoro Tungiana, Drupna, Jigore, Ejere. The Rang Jibu, the Bejo Tanya, Dundala, Benjo Yachimokoya Yomares, Sosugi Chun Yamna Cheala, Dang some Juna Tigor, Dang Juna Tigores, Chesa, Delia Choshe Chores, Dundati Sungore.
This focus is made easier through reflecting that every moment that passes is finished. It cannot be regained, thus time is finished. For example, for all of us, our childhood is over. For most of us, our time of youthful energy is over. We are not going to get that back again in this life. And every moment we sit here, this moment is finished. So therefore, thinking like this, we see that what remains of this life we need to utilize well. So we all have material needs, and these needs need to be sustained so that we can maintain our life, we can develop spiritually, and so forth. What is meant by this line is, it's important to understand clearly what's meant by this line. Literally, forsake material possessions is not the meaning. It's rather, one should come to know oneself better, utilize one's wisdom, and live within one's means. Realistically, see what one needs, fulfill those needs. And thereafter, using the time that's left over, the energy that's left over, in a worthwhile manner. What that worthwhile manner is, again, you use your wisdom and you decide. For some, it may mean they spend much more time studying and meditating. For others, it means they continue to work because they want to utilize their skills and the talents that they have to benefit society, either directly through their work or through the abundance that they have to help others who are in need. So the primary meaning of this line is more similar to have the line in the fourth verse, have modest desires and be easily satisfied, rather than completely forsake or abandon material possessions. So we do this through looking at ourselves, using our wisdom, and then seeing what we do really need, and what we have in abundance beyond that, we can use to help others. We can use our time then either to further ourselves spiritually or in our working life to be of benefit directly and indirectly to others. So the emphasis here is to look at ourselves and use our wisdom.
랑이 배주에 땅에 초유 튕겨 털에 상징 탐전 바 촉시 제시 당점인 디그리스 데네 배 개심을 쌓여 말해야지. 내 데네 잔다 가르쳐 그랬네. 상징 탐지 방화차 사시거든. 랑기 된다라 사야 동에 튕긴 디게 땅에서 디그리스 개심을 쌓여 말해서 상징 방화차세. 데네 안에 다 가르쳐 그래 람나 파베 놀게 gembar차세. 제가 파베 놀 세딩 안 틀려. 디파 배셔 당제 만주기 배셔 당제 냠는 지역으로서 제가 노르세야디 파괴 고방 토비에기 유 파괴 차야기 유 아니 디소 만주기 장국으로서 파괴 놀기 gembar차서.
The meaning then with our first line, forsake material possessions, is don't just think about oneself, your own wealth, your own prestige. Look deeper within yourself, see your potential, and fulfill your actual potential. And then the second line, embellish yourself with the wealth of Aryas. So this is the wealth ideally one should strive for.
그래서 밥에 놀기 gembar차서 아주 괜찮으로 다반에 세르당 우리나 직배 쇼저 직 다비네 안디기 안지 소소게 되어서 나자라 보게야라 지마도 쪼도야다 차야다 되네게 핑이 말해서 안디마제는 아주게 산지 탈바다 밥이 고바 토야 탈바 탐지기 고바 토야라 핑고만 산지 마게와 치마 안디기 난 된주기 고바 토야 핑이 말해서 되네 자당 아주 밥에 놀어야 돼 가르레라나 다 대바제리 대바다 수림 퇴바 동화 진진배님네 제야 안에 와사시바 퇴여바 아니 셰럽 냠네 제데 파비 노르스 그래 대바 어디 이제 대바 사고데 대바 요래 수줌 요래 퇴바 요래 동화 요래 진비니 가제데 대바 건조숨나 대바체야 레데레 대바체 대비냐 대바체야 안을 링아 유숨 요거네 예저든 수줌송야 안 퇴바세도 아니 니야 최디게 야나야도 퇴바 냠 퇴바 퇴야게 취슈야 아니 진비냠레 랑게 시한둥아세야 된 유튜브야 파 로제제 아니 지금 로봇이야 제상다 뭐서 셰바세도 랑라 되대 아니 가서 녀바메 제바 샹라 삼다제 녀바메 제바 네 셰럽시도 달래 디진의 약고도 디진의 약고요 말스 제바집이 셰럽기야 두소 디소는 저기 냠는 제고래 디 냠는 제바나 대sol라티네 파베고방 톱투고래 디네 산요고방 톱티야 톱투고래 세델레이네 소소이네 디기 톱투고래 개와 치마이네 소소라 디기 톱투고래 해서 그래
So rather than embellishing or adorning oneself with mere mundane or worldly attainments such as jewelry, rather we should adorn ourselves with the qualities that benefit ourselves and others, that bring benefit not only in this life but in future lives as well. So the seven Arya, the wealth of the Aryas is mentioned later on in the 25th verse, where it mentions the wealth of faith, the wealth of ethics, the wealth of giving, the wealth of learning, the wealth of conscience, the wealth of shame, and the wealth of wisdom. So the faith we've already looked at earlier, ethics has already been referred to, giving, the mind of generosity, the wealth of learning, becoming highly educated, and the wealth of conscience, or usually embarrassment. So it's a virtuous mind that ensures that we do not act unethically. Similarly with shame. So embarrassment is where one is concerned by what others will perceive, and shame is in relation to from our own side, to where we see behavior as unethical. And the wealth of wisdom. So this would refer to the wisdom of discernment, discerning between what is to be adopted, what is virtuous, and what is to be abandoned, what is non-virtuous. So these are the wealth of the Aryas, or the seven riches.
당저 건조래 대바치고래 상gel이야 대바치고래 세디 지상 내 대바체 세디 나 이체들이 그래 이체세데 나 안주기 건조 세디 간의 시간도 동안 교구리 세비 삼다에도 다 간질레 건조 세디 상계 세디 그래 요 세디 콜리아 나보 상gel이야 연된디게 삼다야 연된 먼저 제바체 삼다제 연된 삼다네 디네기 연된디게 상계기 연된 가려 열었네 그런 게 냠nen도 냠nen 제제 괜 담제 매바 쇠제 연된 용수 소바 그런 귤라 투로 취바디 여바제 괜 군세 연된 군대 템바 상계레스 제산다 다 콜레 이치 제데 가르스네 상계기 나조일야 나조 디기 주비야 당 동아세기 탑람디 아니 된 싱그레 싱그 말에 람나 상예 땡신고라 그래서 그런 냠nen지지 그런 게 냠용 사사르스 제가 그런 냠용 사사와서 그 땡땡 만들래 땡신그리 선배게다 이시들이고라 이시 나 땡신 바나 상예기 땡바디기 땡그리베선 땡땡 땡그리 만들래 제와요레스 제가 다 상예기 땡바게 당한줄 탑람 디제나 동아용그리 디제나 디기 두그리 선배 탑람 땡셴바디 다 ngazu nyamna jena dunga se tuguribe tug mare samtambana 나도 지나가서 심주 제도 단 심주 제도 동아세 투구여 받인가서 하고요도 되네 상jel이야 이체 대바세야 돼 대바 템불이 오르다 상제기 연된 땡땡도 그런 게 가서야 템발 땡기여 받된 투구도 땡 뉴바도 아니 그런 게 템바 될 때네 가서 그런 셰바 나신 가서 냠는 제바 있나 아주 연된 코로나 하시지 땡땡이 투구도 선배기 이치 딜리고 대발리고 제자디 대바세 오르 제자 대바 템부세야 돼 대바디네 연구를 했어야 돼 제자 제바제 두스네
The reason these are called the wealth of Aryas is because it's through cultivating them within oneself, one will attain the Arya states. So the first among the wealth of Aryas is that of faith. So here we can turn towards, for example, having faith in the Buddha. One cultivates this by reflecting on the many qualities that a Buddha has, and that these qualities all arose independent on the training the Buddha, or the being that went on to become the Buddha, engaged in. And why then is the Buddha suitable as an object for us to place our faith in, or to have trust in? Is because a Buddha is a perfected being, perfected in the sense that all good qualities have been developed completely, and all faults have been completely eradicated. So there's no impediment to the wisdom of a Buddha. Therefore, a Buddha knows perfectly the methods that beings need to engage in to cultivate the same good qualities that the Buddha has, as well as the methods beings need to engage in to abandon all faults completely. Reflecting like this repeatedly over a sustained period, one will develop certainty that the Buddha is a worthy object to place our faith or our trust in. And this is called the faith of conviction, and it is a faith that is stable because it's based on reasoning. Coming from an analysis and reasoning, one's faith then is stable.
대바체 이시신의 켈랭가요 말스 네 시셔교 되게려야 교원의 심주체 제바체 덴바 예바이나 문의에서 툼바치고기나 교라디 켈랭치고 그래서 문의에서 툼바치 매바이나 네 교원의 켈랭가요 말스 산예가 랑기마 마한솔야 랑화 차사 지금 주기 능고마도 나산예에 네시바도 교원의 년고래 만년에 디포사그레 되네 사데 대송고마 산예 좀는 되기 네 마셰디 경zul의 심죽제 제바제 냠명사 되네 냠명사도 무인의 수대 따다지 차기여반에 딩의시 교대 냠는지 아니 베제 당셔서 딩 무인의 수대 미튠바다 따다 차기면에 딩 냠는지 와요 말 샤셔서 거래.
So Buddha himself, so in his lifetime, he said explicitly, don't just accept what I say because I am the Buddha. Don't accept what is said. Don't accept what I say based on my reputation or the prestige with which others relate to me. Take what I've said. Think about it for yourself. Think about it for yourself and think in detail, not superficially. Think in detail. Come to see whether what I say is in accordance with reality or if it's not. And then take what I've said and what you have come to see as being in accordance with reality and integrate it in yourself. Gain experience of what I'm presenting. This is the way to approach my teachings, not merely based on my reputation, but think for yourself.
네 진랍제 제제 람사 경주 귤에 유비게 동아데 매바서야 단 디기 주야데 되네 요 말레스 제가 다 나이 귤에 유케기 연된 디게 경주 마제제 아니 경주에 디기 주야다 근데 저게 동아서야 되네 용거 말레스 그래서 안다 가르요레 람나 네 경주에 디 냠는 디 제고래 디제나 동아세그레 디제네 디기 주비레스베 탑람댕이 시리에스 경주야 마노와 마투바치 시기레스 디교노즈 라렌타바이네 디교노즈 동아시아 디기투 그래 네셰바 탑람 템바데 교노즈 따다 라렌타 모두 마타바이네 디니 디레스 마투 저장이 교노즈야 탑람 띵기레스 랍제게 람든치기레 디 람든디 교노즈게 라렌 야포타바이나 냠는 제바이네 디기투비아 동아시아디 디네게 세그레 마도 네 알야 데바체 네 대바체등이 진랍제제 람사형도 동아세야 되기 주야 되네 요야 말해서 그랬어요.
Buddha also said, I cannot even myself as the Buddha, I cannot wash away your faults. Moreover, I can't bestow my good qualities on you. Through my blessings, I cannot bestow my good qualities on you. The only way I can help is by teaching you the Dharma, is by teaching you what paths to cultivate within yourself, by teaching you all the various methods and how to cultivate them so as to cultivate good qualities and abandon all faults. But then it is up to you to think for yourself, to apply this and apply yourself to my teachings. So what I can do as the Buddha is illuminate the path, but it is up to you to cultivate the path within you.
다디 정고인의 수팀바데 차거와다 나중에 롭정럽스 카레이네 옌디기 말랍체 텔라바나신 가서 롭정 체외나 아니 교환 기행 그런 거 신바 나신 롭정데 가서 시투고 신도 베네 시에 차게나라 류제제가 있나라 센리케바 차에나 롭정 카레이네 옌디기 마 나서 두수 제고르서 레고르바 랍제 라바나신 가서 두수수 장바이나 코로나 나신 바나신 가서 차투고래 맞아바이나 아니 차투고 말바 찍바찍야다디.
Once again, what the Buddha is saying is completely in accordance with what we know from society, from our young days at school and university to adulthood as well. Every new skill that we acquired, we may have had someone train us, but we had to get involved. They couldn't implant the information inside us or give us a skill or a talent. We had to develop this within ourselves through effort, repeatedly over a sustained period. So others can teach us. Others can attempt to teach us. Whether we actually learn anything, this is up to us.
아니네 자다가 저게 제자 상계에 다데 송샤게 상계 좀데 되게 송샤게디다 아 저게 안에 가서 조지 가서래 송고르와 제자다 가서 송고르세나 나서 셈 나올이야 약도디 디 삼모데니 신나 두가레 딜레디네 두가 용고레 디 매바서 고레사 셈 야가지 디 야가레 디 나저게 곰제 냠네지 야디 누바처 땅고레 디 땅바에나 나서 라신이가레 디기 주야다 동아 세도에 디레사데 디네 송요데 제자 델야 콩조사야다 나자사야다 디수 셈 두가 셴레 뇌베 삼바 삼다야데 디세 삼로 두가 디수 매바서 고레사 제자다 먼저 삼로 야가데 가르레라네 셴리야 잠베 삼바 셴리야 제외 삼바 아니 셴야 미 랑게 셴리야 뇌 바 류가 유수전에 뇌바 지메 셈베 삼라 셴리야 아니 동외 셈바 두스네 삼로디게 야하레스 딩아주 비슷한 거래세디 당아주 잘라마선 디 야가레다 아주 규메란절에 총야로네 규엔지 어디 교란 녀변의 규제 약고하래 대 소라 약고하래 디 규누고 당그래서 어다디 닝조로 통과할 때마다 규제 약고요 말에 소라 약고 말디 약고 당그 말에서 라트시 자라뉴에 담야처럼 어디 나시 아주 삼로들이야 아니 라트시 지고래 제자다 라트 두수 예제 송바 나신 징아주이네 경험자 딱지치 쇼스키디네 셈리아 딱지치 인생고도 셈리아 삼로가리리도 간의 연구도 봐 딱지치 데이터네 냠명 사쇼선 럽지디게고르와 제젠자 만주 럽지게 디레 디소 당아주 셈나 두스 럽지는 거르와 다디나와 나싱아 저기 공조다 나자다 샤라 뉴베 삼바티 파 게마주에 파 가야 삼다 아니가 저기 잠바다 제와다 아니 지기 샤련데 지기메 셈비기 뽕에 셈바다 아니 지기 냠는 디수야 삼로디게 야 슉셔셔다 다웨네 당어도 동아세야다 디기투비야디 라레 디기투비야 동아세투 세야제 뉴바리고레 샤레야 안 동아세야다 디기투에 판도치투고레 지산 데네기 아주 삼로디 다 냠는 지야디 디소리 해시레.
The advice that is being given to us here by Lama Atisha is in its briefest form: take responsibility for your own mind, become aware of your own mind, correctly discern your inner process, become aware of which minds are present, and discern whether that particular mind is wholesome and beneficial or unwholesome and harmful. This is a process very similar, again, to what we engage in society. Before, for example, we purchase something, especially if it's something that we either that is going to be very useful to us, or if it's quite an investment, it's expensive, we'll research well and think of what are the pros and the cons of the various choices, and based on our knowledge, we will then make a decision. So the similar process of analysis. Be aware of our inner workings, utilizing conscientiousness, vigilance, and mindfulness. Be aware of our inner process. Try and keep our mind wholesome. Mind such as love and compassion. Try and keep them present. Keep, as well as the attitude of ethical restraint, the commitment not to bring harm to others, the attitude of generosity, the wish to be of benefit to others. So here we have the opportunity in an intensive way over these days together, to hear this knowledge, to gain experience of this knowledge in retreat, and to gain more experience of utilizing mindfulness, introspection, and conscientiousness. And as we gain more experience of this, then in our daily life, while we're engaging in our activities at work or at home or with our friends, we'll be able to be more and more aware of our inner workings, seeing when an affliction arises, and based on the skill we developed in meditation, apply the antidote, eradicate that affliction. And when we're noticing our mind is virtuous, rejoice in that, keep it virtuous. And in this way, as we gain ever more experience of meditating on what we've learnt in the teachings, and gaining more experience then of applying it in our daily life, we will see that harmful minds such as pride and anger start to become less dominant within us. And virtuous minds such as love and compassion and ethics become ever more dominant in us. And this is something that it's not just a mere intellectual exercise where one is naming something within oneself, but one experiences this. As one becomes more habituated to, for example, love, compassion, and ethics, one's state of mind is happier, more peaceful, calmer. We're able to deal with difficulties with far more skill. The rise of all classes of unhappiness, these become much less frequent and and less powerful than before. So we experience this inner transformation, and moreover we experience the impact we're having on others. We see a change in how we communicate with others, how we interact with others, and we experience their change in how they relate to us. And this all comes about through repeated training over a sustained period, developing this ever greater awareness of our inner workings and transforming our way of thinking.
Nene tue sevejina ndijene di yakoyar diji yomars pa jige sungorwa jisan tewe dwendele ya tue sarvejele ya dwenda dele samda dijene yakoyomar dijene yakoyor son dene gi dwenda dil pa samda jebache samda je dene sosuraragi nyamnyora jik chukdu jik jeyodu nyamnyol pa sayodu dene resha sambige tache bar leyodu dene gomjago rese gomjago tösam gomsumse geçmişi var. Cezadan önce da dene dirin azma jike jamba komna şala jamba somna yagoyon kuresa şala konro sana ne yagoyomar ese şigorwa de şeba naşi dagara re sambam치 마샤바체 delya jebache 간스 용구도 jamba 간스 용구 samlo da jebache 소소의 냠녀서 jike düsüçilya nimicilya şençik Shaya, but Jambajaya samdaje, minium the two says some daju jedukabla, do shin, Shimjuche, and Dinimadelia, and the Diring Jambajaya some daje, Jambokum Shale, Jamze, and Niju Gombigi, Diring Alia, Yaga, Karish, Majiba, Karishunson, Consolia, Canis Pandora, Johnson, Sembi, Shimjuche, Chiche. And Nimichians, Conrad Saja, getting the lungs to the Duenchi Pajik Jene, and do send the magic Jene, and do send Shimjuche. Aya. 디딩 롱수도 되는데 소소래 디기 간에 중소 현대에 판례 같은 중소도 제 심주 제외다 안다 심 야가디 가려운구도 딩이데 야가디 담죠 어다디 야가레샤디 뇌레샤 선배게 약도디 세부하고로 세부하고선 근데 약보디 니게디나 델리아 셈 야네야도 셈 제지도 곰지 지검야다 냠내지야디 디제고래 송고르다
Hearing, reflecting, and meditating, these three are of great importance. So hearing is hearing teachings, reading teachings, coming to understand them well. Reflecting is taking the knowledge that one has gained and reflecting, analyzing, investigating that. So these two, hearing and reflecting, of the three, hearing, reflecting, and meditating, the first two are done both simultaneously and sequentially. Whilst one is hearing a teaching, reading a book, one thinks about the meaning, analyzes it. Is this true or not? Is this in accordance with my experience or not? Can I see this actually being correct from my own experience or not? So whilst you hear the teachings, whilst you're reading the book, you reflect on the meaning, you analyze, you investigate. And then, of course, after reading, after reflecting, in what generally we call meditation, but not in this context, one is engaging in analytical meditation on the topic, again, investigating, analyzing, coming to see the truth, the validity of the topic, see how it works in your life in a variety of situations. So this is the process of reflection. The meditation in this context follows after hearing and reflecting. So meditation here would refer to, on this particular topic, when one, through repeated hearing and reflecting over a sustained period, has come to gain certainty about that topic, perhaps have some experience of the topic, then one would call it meditation. Although the process looks similar in that you're engaging in analysis on the topic, but it would be called, in this context, meditation, once one has gained certainty of the topic. And here, as one progresses in this process of hearing and reflecting and meditating, what one is doing is becoming ever more habituated or familiar with a virtuous way of thinking. And as it will arise then in our meditation, ever more readily, more easily. And then out of meditation, it will continue to have an impact on our day-to-day activities for a longer period. And as we recall what we're meditating on in the morning, as we recall it in the day, more easily it will come to mind and continue to have an impact on us. And if we also have as a habit, at the end of the day, reflect on our progress of that day, how we fulfilled our commitments of the morning, we'll start to become ever more aware of the change. So for example, in the morning, if we set as a commitment today, I will not harm others. Or if we set as a commitment today, everyone that I engage in, I will intentionally engage with them with awareness of love for them. The wish, may this being experience only happiness. Then we set the motivation in the morning, we keep recalling it during the day. Then at the end of the day, we reflect, how did we interact with others today? How did we do today compared to last week, last month, and previously? And we'll start to become aware of this change within us. And this is important because it serves to motivate us. It strengthens our joyous perseverance because we're starting to be ever more aware that we are becoming the person that we want to be, that we are developing our potential within us.
Dujing tamje panjashin gombalani nepara jahasirda.
Then the text continues. Avoid all trifling distractions and reside in the solitude of wilderness.
Tezanda nganzo nyamlen chidu kabele le tangbo wa tada nganzo pe saba le chisan saba nyamlen chele pe chim dujing la ni mi mangbo yosa geje mangbo kosa de dini toba na nganzo semji pa yuo zhuo shuo shuo yore chisan pa geshi xia da ji pa chu 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 de dini inza da dini gi nganzo tangbo nyamlen da de nganzo semji lobchen nyamnin jangdor de yapo theo marwa mathe ba inza deni ge kapla pa mi mangbo yosa da deni yechi mangbo yosa deni pa pangje ya gomba ta de taring ne emba gomba jil pa de che na nyamnen je gore so de dusin tamje pa ja je gomba le ne bar ja sa.
For beginners such as ourselves, this is useful advice. Avoid all trifling distractions and reside in the solitude of wilderness. Because we know when we are around a lot of energy, people chatting, engaging in many activities, our mind becomes distracted by what we are seeing, what we are hearing, and our mind gets consumed, taken up by all the conversation, all the energy and activities. So for us as beginners, to gain some control of our mind, to gain more skill with mindfulness, introspection, and conscientiousness, it's necessary to reside or retreat to places of solitude.
Mishanda Mevaza Geshe Thubten Rabten Mare, the Nijige, and the Korlaya, Chapakia, and the Nihumare, Chesa, the Nigine Baladures, taking out to the same Nyamnyong, Jangdu Gablinza. The Bene, the Nigi, Gom Yamne, Sosolia, Semlia, Jangdora, Wood Cheven, Tevin, Benejanjusemba. Janjusemba Pagwata, the Zun Yamlen Batiki, the Korazun Yamne, Jangdor Yapo Tevaza, that Duzina Yami Mambo Yustune, Notisha Yomardiza, Dene Mambo, Sosugi, Nyamnyong, Yapos Jangdor Semlia, Jangdor Yapu Yovaza, and Ba Chisonalba, Yuanche, then me Mambo, Denikichelia, and the Chilopton chair, the Robert chair, the Ponto chair, the Ungores, Dizada, that Dusing Paje, near Baldure setting on Jugi Le Tambo, Yamlen, Jangdor Mative, Neraso, Jangdor Chebi Cablia, the Niki Panchi, near Baldu Jangdor Chores, Jangdor Sosu and Yamyong, Kalakasam Tenje, the Chiki, Dusinian Q and Sosugi, some Q Meva, some Tibu Chasavana. Didn't mean me Mambo Nalpa, US Mambo Party, and Delia, and Shenki Panto Pukures or that Jajusemba de Dinis Yamlin Nangore, Jajusembe Yamlin Nambo Chidu, near Embala Dusin, Kosum in the Yamlin Che, the Neba Yamlin in the Jajusembe Yamlin, Ya Topo Ya Tortor Chidin, Sosuke Semlia, Yamlin Timbu Chayadu, that Sim Dinima Chison Albachi Chicken Shalia, Chicama Sea, the Tikutualia, Robo Pandoya, which had Dusnangores.
The purpose for retreating to a place of solitude is to develop habituation with virtuous ways of thinking, to strengthen our habituation to all the virtuous qualities already mentioned thus far. And to the extent that one becomes skilled in taking care of our mind, taking control of our mind, enabling our mind to remain virtuous, when we re-engage in society, we'll be of more benefit to others. So a new bodhisattva, a beginner bodhisattva, they will retreat to solitude to cultivate good qualities in their mind. And these virtuous qualities, when they are stable within themselves, they will then return to society to aid suffering beings. And in particular, when a bodhisattva becomes an Arya being, then they will be able to ensure that they will be able to engage with others in a way that is always beneficial. So therefore, in brief, the beginner bodhisattva retreats to solitude to develop the stability of the virtuous qualities in their continuum. And when they are stable, they are then ready to return to society and be of great benefit to suffering beings.
Denigi, Chevi, Signam Panjashin, Dado Dama, Dado Mani Tambarcha, said the Chevi 60 and Nakia, Nakia di Kichiko Mares, and Nakia said, Dona Juni me, they can Taras Kishine, Chiki, Shechorwa, Denigi, Adici, Damara Shechorwa, and Denigi, Nakia Chiko Mara, Dishavana, Carionus, Sosuke, Nyamlen Kijur Chevalaya, Nyamlelia, and Dusuti. cholatan kore che da ngan du sin ji yung do ki shi ra shi da ma ra shin de ne du se ma wo ze ko ne du se kan so ma ha mo wa du se zo de yung do an de ne ge ki shi ma bo nam gyin de ne ji de ne ki shi de ko ma ra de ya ji ma ki ba de yung go wa ji ne za de ne ga che don da me bi ki shi shi ne du chen de ba ina du se ma mo chen ne nga zu ge che chi ya ko ra ge ma du se sho do ko re che za de ne za de ne sam ta gyo ma chi gyo ma res ne Dene Tado Danga Temper Kasa, Tado Nani Tamper Cha, Sidu, Denigi Na, that's also Samno Nam, that's the Nani Yadi, Samno Kulona Ligarua, Samno Kulona Lia Denigi, that Denigi Kichi Dona, maybe Kishi me, something, Samlochi Kulon, Denigi Yobaina, Digi Samlo Digi Nanipa, and they think Archaic Dona, maybe Kishi Shigmar, or Samlodi, Shigi me, some Samlo. Deni Shigi me, Samlo Mebaina. And then I can't think more doing good. Just that Nani temperature, Nadi, Shigio Marepa, Shigio Maresungora. Just that my share ding on the seminalia, the Casana, the Junior Chuba, Nashing on the same that Dash. Seminal Carasamus, the Nami be sick, Taras, Gohore, Mission, Gohora, Niga, Gohor Teg, sick the Kishi, the Shigme, some Begeda, some Tango Regere.
Abandon frivolous words. So frivolous words refer specifically to idle speech. It's speech without much meaning. So it, of course, has meaning. It's not just sound, but in terms of purposeful speech, this is opposite to purposeful speech. So the purpose or the point in guarding ourselves or abandoning from frivolous speech is because we can so much of our life can be wasted in just idle talk. Not only does it waste our time and waste our opportunity to spiritually develop, but we tend to get quite drawn up in this idle speech. Our afflictions readily arise, and we are distracted from keeping our mind virtuous. And in this way, our opportunity to spiritually develop is wasted. Rather than the next line, we should constantly guard your speech. And as we've heard, guarding our speech depends on guarding our mind, taking care of our mind, remaining aware of our mind. So here, when we are with others, be aware of your mind. To the extent we are aware of our mind, we will therefore be aware of our speech. Being aware of our mind will keep it wholesome. Therefore, we will not engage in idle speech. Moreover, we won't engage in harsh speech or lying or the other one too. We won't engage in divisive speech. So again, the meaning is take care of your mind, not just when you're alone, but in particular when you're with others. And in this way, take care of your speech too.
지산 다동안에 담바시 기디나 기시마시 되서 sikdi고에 닝아도와 지산 디싱고마다 다동안에 담바시 나ఖ్야 기디나 셴레 균주게 칙다 안지 돈다 메베 칙 뒤수 남면 뒤수 촐라다야기 기시디게 기디나 시교 말해서 그걸 담아자서 지산 맞아 양지게 니수 돈다 여바 당한주기 지금 우연히 수다 튠비게 된다 여비기 시화되게 내시고로 맞아 되게 지나야지 다동안 담바샤선 가주네 마시제 가슴 뒤에서야지 디고 그거 말다 나자의 직 현래 균주체야다 나자의 직 판모도기 라신 니가라 미펜비게 뇌비게 직 고허 뒤수 촐라도에 직디게 파기 시교 말다 바 송고그레스 이내다 현래게 펜비게 기시다 안 현래야 판도 롭된지야 아니 아직 저기 뭐니 쓰다 직리아가다 되는게 저기 기시지야다 롭된지야 되는 내가 거기게 판도 여봐도 그거 예비기 시게 신나지고 와.
The second line then in the Tibetan literally means constantly refrain from speech. So Genla is now explaining that this, of course, is not the meaning. The meaning is, as we have here, constantly guard your speech. Because when we need to engage in speech with others, we certainly should do so. However, we should guard our mind and make sure that the speech that we are engaging in is virtuous, is wholesome. So it's not an instruction to remain silent, Rather, it's an instruction to ensure that our interactions with others are beneficial.
Adine lama kambo tongwe che ngubi rimjo jebra cha sede da rangi lama da ane kembo la so pa je lamsa de ya tong de ya ji gushep che ya da an ji roba che ho ya de ne ku gushep che rimjo che ya de du chine je go re so da bene 지기야 나무 캠버디 편이 피규어바나 데다 시야랑 구십체야다 안디와 지 람가디와 파 지기 야고 드라마도 වෙ는 라베 텐지 치로지야다 야 지기 로바카르 치고나 되는 치고야 되는게 지고 그래서 되네 라메게 라마다 캠보 다 소속의 라마다 쉐팅의 라마다 캠보이나 델리아 안 소속의 깨진 잼베톤에 안 소속의 깨진 챔보레 스미 깨진 구송 투숨 유연된 제야다 안데 델리아 깨진 제야다 안 두시는 야고 싶제야다 안데 좀 조시고래 에세스모레.
In the next two lines, when you see your teachers and preceptors reverently generate the wish to serve, again, this is referring to the mind. So the activities will be verbal and physical, but it refers to having developed particular mental qualities that through reflecting on the many good qualities of one's teachers and preceptors' mind, their speech, and their body, having reflected well on their good qualities, then express that through how one speaks to them, or how one acts around them. So, for example, if one's a teacher or preceptor enters, one would generally stand up, or if the path is narrow, one would step aside. And moreover, wherever one can help, one should offer service. But this behavior and speech comes about independent on the prior cultivation of an attitude of respect.
시에티 가른 냠는 최고래라나 대시 쇼가 셰바나지레 다다 당아 주게 또 셈리아 다지치 심주치 다셈 삼로 가르스타나 아니 라신이가래 펜바디 연구도 라신이가라 셈간 삼로 가르스타나 라신이가라 네바디 연구도 셈베게다 도 삼당고 그래서 셈레 다지치 그래서다 당아 주게 조지 가상한 줄이야 제롭된 지야들 잠바 니지 고미야 아니지 류가 유순에 샬라 너바 지기 메스베 니지 송야 안지게 다디데 당아캬 담시디 디세 촐라줘야다 라신이가라 마펜비기 기치기 시기메 세베 삼로 디소 담바이나 라신이레 핑고레스 라라 펜샬라 핑고레스 제자 삼로 딩아 주 비시 담고레스 당아주 삼로 가르코고 내가주 가르코고도 다셔데 가산 잠바데 시진이게 다선지가 삼로 나라 가르리고도 섬도 심지에 콩을 끼고요 바다 나야기고요 바다 되네 이 류가이스 예주 마돈바체 안샬리아 채와지리가 삼로데 지기 류가 이주번에 샬라 채와지게 삼로 끼고요나 어디 삼로도 노트레샤 제산 되네 인자 디파 삼로데 까고를 빵고를 했으면 끼마주지 까고를 해서지 다도 나라가 저기 디 삼로데게 공초 나야 안지게 로베초서 정보 맞이해서 정보에 삼리가 뒤술래나 라신이가래 뇌에게 뉴요레스 뒤섬로디게 바방고레스 잠바단 제바단 샬란네버 류에스 샬란네버 지금에 송외 주림다 안에지 동외 셈바 대속에 샬라 핑코딩 아주 냠네 제고레스 되다 아주 셈르 마선의 잘랄 마선의 야두디 야가레데 두아레스네 나즈리아 지금 모트신 제고레 세상 아주디 다 야가딩 아주 냠네 제 야네 양도 삼당 두아디 다 아주 마키에게 돈달이야 안지 데디네키네 야고요 마디케시요 마다 삼베게 삼다 어두스네 베시다 냠네 제세야 된 아주 두 삼다의 책으로 봐 대한데 가산 셰바네 렘바타 시진이데 베기 침부지고 지자 시진기 아주 삼로나라 기까지 콜고도는데 시진이 제바지 다야다 하고 시진기 하고 요도 남상 잠바데 어디 야고요 마디치기요 마레 삼베게 잠바테야디 기침부 슈차고 해서 다는 아주 다디 디네게 삼다 된 아주 냠는 제스는 아주 삼래 야네 두체야디 다디링 나가산 디링 롭창기가 삼다야디 디차기도 와
So through these 8 verses, you would have seen a constant theme. We need to take care of our mind, Buddhist practice is about mental development. First and foremost, it's about mental development. We need to become aware of our inner workings, our inner process, come to understand which ways of thinking are beneficial and which are harmful. So the way to do this is to cultivate knowledge and then to integrate that knowledge through meditation. This I refer to in this session, hearing, reflecting and meditating. Hearing teachings, reading texts, reflecting on that meaning, using analysis and investigation, coming to see the validity of the teachings, coming to see the truth of the teachings, its applicableness to our own life. That is not some mere theory, but it's something of great use, and that should be put to use. So in order to be skilled in this, one needs to engage in this process repeatedly over a sustained period. Repetition is key. Because again, the synonyms for the word meditation are habituation and familiarity. So what we're trying to do is become habituated to virtuous ways of thinking and thereby break our habituation, weaken our habituation to non-virtuous ways of thinking. This comes about in dependence on gaining knowledge so that one can identify more skillfully what is beneficial and what is harmful, and then integrating that through reflection within ourselves. Through this process of hearing and reflecting and meditating, we'll understand that consciousnesses such as harmful intent, pride, and so forth, these only lead to suffering. Anger, attachment, they only lead to suffering. And rather, their contrary minds need to be cultivated. For example, ethical restraint, the determination not to harm others, to restrain our mind from coming under the influence of the afflictions, and thereby we will restrain our speech and restrain our behavior. Similarly, to guard ourselves from the self-cherishing mind through recognizing the role it plays, the danger that it plays, and rather cultivate the other cherishing mind, seeing the needs of others as primary, and using this as a basis to, in conjunction, develop love and compassion as well. And the way to develop these good qualities is to rely on the mental factors that we looked at yesterday. Conscientiousness, vigilance, mindfulness. These are of great importance because it's through relying on vigilance or introspection, being aware of our mental process, that when we notice that it's virtuous, we can rejoice and keep our mind virtuous. We can also utilize mindfulness then to remind ourselves of the benefits of virtue, of virtuous ways of thinking, such as love and compassion, ethical restraint, and so forth. Likewise, when through introspection or vigilance, we notice that our mind is now unwholesome, the afflictions have arisen. We then utilize mindfulness to firstly remind ourselves of the harm of the afflictions, that they are never beneficial, they are never justified. And we use mindfulness again to remind ourselves of the antidote. Then we apply the antidote. In this way, virtuous minds such as ethical restraint, generosity, love, and compassion, these will become ever more dominant within us. Not just in meditation, but as we gain habituation in our meditation, that habituation will start to play through in our daily life, especially when in our busy days we take merely moments here and there to remind ourselves of what we were meditating on that morning, remind ourselves of our commitment, for example, not to harm others in our interactions, remind ourselves of our commitment to engage or interact with others in a loving way. And in this way, our habituation becomes ever stronger. But this whole process comes about in dependence on hearing and reflecting and meditating, as well as relying on the consciousnesses of mindfulness, introspection, and conscientiousness. And these three, again, I want to emphasize their great importance. So thank you. We'll finish here then for this afternoon. Thank you.